The morning sun rose over New Geneva's crystal spires, casting rainbow patterns across the agricultural domes that fed 500,000 souls. Children laughed in the playground pods floating between the towers, their joy echoing through the artificial atmosphere. Dr. Elena Vasquez smiled as she watched her daughter Maya chase holographic butterflies, their wings shimmering with impossible colors. "Mama, look," Maya called out, cupping a projection in her tiny hands. "It's singing." Elena's heart swelled. 3 generations of her family had built this world from nothing but rock and ice. Her grandfather had been among the first her parents had raised the great domes, and now she tended the bioengineered gardens that turned carbon dioxide into breathable air. The scanner in her lab coat chirped. Atmospheric readings were perfect. Population health indices were optimal. New Geneva was humanity's crown jewel in the Tau Ceti system, a testament to what their species could achieve when they worked together. The warning sirens began at 10:47 local time. Elena's blood turned to ice as the harmonic wail cut through the morning air. She'd only heard it during drills. Maya's face crumpled in confusion and fear. "Mama, what's that sound?" Elena scooped her daughter into her arms and ran. Around them, the peaceful morning dissolved into chaos. Families poured from their homes. Faces turned skyward where dark shapes were descending through the atmosphere. The Kithara had found them. Admiral Marcus Kane stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, his weathered face illuminated by the tactical display. At 62, he'd served in 3 colonial wars and thought he'd seen the worst the galaxy had to offer. The distress beacon from New Geneva proved him wrong. "Cygnus been broadcasting for 6 hours, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Automated systems only. No human transmissions." Kane's jaw clenched. The silence spoke volumes. New Geneva had been home to 500,000 people. If the automated systems were the only thing left talking. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving reports from the outer colonies. Kepler 442b, Proxima Centauri Wolf 359. They're all detecting massive fleet movements in the Kithara sectors." Kane's hands gripped the rail until his knuckles went white. The Kithara Empire had been expanding for centuries, consuming every inhabited world in their path. They showed no mercy, took no prisoners, and left nothing but scorched earth in their wake. For 50 years, humanity had managed to avoid their attention. That time was over. "Get me the Secretary General," Kane ordered, and prepped the emergency session protocols. Every nation, every colony, every ship captain who can hear this signal. His voice carried the weight of command that had kept humanity alive through 2 alien incursions. The Kithara wanted a war. They're about to get one. The footage from New Geneva's final moments played on screens across. Earth security cameras had captured the Kithara descent ships landing like massive black teardrops, disgorging legions of armored warriors. The aliens stood 9 feet tall, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming with an oily sheen, mandibles clicking with predatory hunger. They had swept through the colony like a plague. Elena's final transmission had been broadcast from the agricultural dome. Maya clutching her leg as energy weapons lit up the sky behind them. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, of New Geneva Colony. The Kithara have breached our defenses. We are dying here, but we want our families on Earth to know we stood our ground. We fought for every life, every child, every dream we built in this place." The transmission cut to static as a Kithara warrior's plasma cannon reduced the dome to molten glass. In the emergency session of the United Earth Council, every delegate sat in stunned silence. President Williams of the North American Federation spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. "How many?" "500,000 confirmed dead," Admiral Kane replied. "New Geneva is gone. The Kithara have established a forward base on the planet's surface." Chairman Lee of the Pacific Alliance leaned forward. "And their fleet, 12,000 vessels, Sir Dreadnoughts, carriers, and support craft. They're using New Geneva as a staging ground for further incursions into human space." The Brazilian delegate slammed his fist on the table. "Then we hit them back. We hit them with everything we have." "With respect, sir," Kane interjected, "everything we have may not be enough. The Kithara have been building this fleet for decades. Our combined forces number maybe 4,000 ships." Secretary General the elderly Japanese statesman who had held the fractured nations of Earth together for 15 years, stood slowly. His voice carried the weight of species survival. "Admiral Kane, you've read the intelligence reports. You know what they do to captured worlds? The Cathara don't just kill their race. They strip planets bare, consume every living thing, and leave nothing but dead rock behind. Kane nodded grimly. Yes, sir. New Geneva was our line in the sand. They crossed it. Nakamura's eyes hardened. How long would it take to mobilize our entire fleet? Every ship, sir. Military, civilian, construction crews, mining vessels, colony, every ship, every station, every orbital platform. I want a fleet so large it blocks out the stars themselves. Kane's breath caught. The Secretary General was talking about the largest military mobilization in human history. 6 months, sir. Maybe 5 if we cut corners on safety protocols. You have 3 months, Admiral. And, Admiral. Nakamura's voice carried the authority of a species pushed to its breaking point. I want them to know that when you kill human children, when you burn human worlds, when you think you can erase us from existence, there are consequences. The shipyards of Earth, Luna, Mars, and the asteroid belt had never seen anything like it. Every construction berth, every manufacturing facility, every orbital platform was retooled for one purpose: building the largest war fleet in human history. The Titan-class dreadnoughts were behemoths, each one stretching 5 kilometers from bow to stern. Their hulls were layered with reactive armor that could withstand direct hits from Cathara plasma cannons. Their primary weapons were magnetic accelerator cannons that could punch through a moon. But the dreadnoughts were just the beginning. The Valkyrie-class carriers each housed 1,000 fighters, their pilots trained in virtual reality chambers that simulated every known Cathara combat scenario. The Hammer-class cruisers were fast and deadly, designed to punch through enemy lines and deliver devastating close-range attacks. The Anvil-class battleships were mobile weapons platforms, bristling with enough firepower to glass a continent. And then there were the support vessels, hospital ships to save lives, supply ships to keep the fleet fed and armed, repair ships to patch holes and restore systems, troop transports filled with Marines who had trained for one mission, taking back what was theirs. Admiral Kane stood in the observation deck of the UES Retribution, the flagship of the largest fleet ever assembled. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the impossible sight that would live in human memory forever. Ships stretched in every direction, their running lights creating a constellation of human determination. Fleet status report, he ordered. All ships report ready, Admiral, Torres replied. We have 8,743 vessels of all classes, 150 million personnel. Every major nation, every colony, every settlement has contributed to this fleet. Kane nodded. Behind him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These were the best of humanity: engineers, tacticians, pilots, and commanders who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They knew they were making history. Open a channel to the fleet, Kane ordered. All ships, all frequencies. The communications officer nodded. Channel open. Admiral. Kane straightened his shoulders and spoke into the microphone. His words would be recorded, transmitted across human space, and remembered for as long as their species survived. This is Admiral Marcus Kane of the United Earth Defense Force. 4 months ago, the Cathara Empire murdered 500,000 human beings. They burned our colony, killed our children, and thought they could erase us from existence. His voice carried across 8,000 ships, reaching every crew member, every Marine, every pilot who would carry humanity's vengeance to the stars. They were wrong. The fleet began to move, a wall of steel and fire that stretched across the void. The Cathara had awoken something they didn't understand. They had pushed humanity to its breaking point and discovered that humans, when cornered, didn't surrender. They fought. The jump to New Geneva took 6 hours. Kane stood in the command center, watching the tactical display as scout ships reported back from the target system. The Cathara fleet was exactly where intelligence had predicted, using the planet's orbital space as a marshalling point for their next wave of conquest. Enemy fleet composition confirmed. The tactical officer reported, 12,000 vessels, exactly as predicted. They're maintaining standard formation around the planet. Kane studied the display. The Cathara were confident, comfortable. They had no idea what was coming. All ships, Kane ordered. Prepare for combat jump. We're going to arrive in formation, guns hot, and remind them why you don't mess with human worlds. The jump was perfect. 8,743 ships materialized in New Geneva's system like an avenging angel. their combined mass creating gravitational distortions that registered on every sensor in the system. The Kythera fleet, caught completely off guard, scrambled to respond, but they were too late. Kane's voice echoed across the fleet frequency. "All ships, this is Admiral Kane. You are looking at the system where 500,000 human beings died. You are looking at the aliens who killed them. Today, we teach the galaxy that humanity is not to be underestimated." He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "All ships, you are free to engage. Show them what happens when you make an enemy of the human race." The battle began with a coordinated alpha strike that lit up the system like a newborn star. Thousands of magnetic accelerator cannons fired simultaneously, their projectiles crossing the void at a significant fraction of light speed. The Kythera formation, tight and disciplined, became a death trap as kinetic rounds punched through their ships like bullets through paper. The first wave of Kythera vessels died in seconds, but the Kythera were not helpless. Their remaining ships spread out, firing plasma weapons that could boil away ship hulls. Their fighters swarmed like angry insects, engaging the human squadrons in deadly knife fights between the capital ships. Kane watched the battle unfold on the tactical display, his experienced eye tracking the ebb and flow of combat. The Kythera were good, disciplined, aggressive, and deadly, but they had made one critical error. They had underestimated human resolve. Admiral Torres called out, "The U.S. Thermopylae is requesting permission to execute the Broken Arrow Protocol." Kane's blood chilled. The Broken Arrow was a last resort tactic, a damaged ship making a kamikaze run at the enemy fleet. The Thermopylae was a Titan-class dreadnought with 8,000 crew members aboard. "Patch me through to Captain Morrison," Kane ordered. The screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Thermopylae. Captain Morrison's face was streaked with blood, and emergency lighting cast hellish shadows across his features. Behind him, Kane could see crew members fighting to keep their ship alive. "Admiral," Morrison said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We've lost main power, life support is failing, and our weapon systems are offline. But our engines are still good, and we're sitting on enough antimatter to take out half their fleet." Kane closed his eyes. Morrison had a wife and twin daughters back on Earth. He was asking permission to die. "Captain," Kane said quietly, "you have 3 minutes to get your crew to the escape pods. Then you have my permission to show these bastards what happens when you kill human children." Morrison smiled, and Kane saw the same expression he'd seen on the faces of heroes throughout human history. "Copy that, Admiral. It's been an honor serving with you." The Thermopylae's escape pods launched like scattered seeds, racing away from the dying dreadnought. Morrison remained on the bridge, his hand steady on the controls as he aimed his ship at the heart of the Kythera fleet. "This is for New Geneva," he whispered, and engaged the engines. The Thermopylae accelerated to ramming speed, its massive hull cutting through space like a spear thrown by an angry god. Kythera ships tried to intercept it, but the dreadnought's armor held long enough for Morrison to reach his target. The antimatter explosion could be seen from 3 star systems away. When the light faded, a quarter of the Kythera fleet was simply gone. The survivors, suddenly outnumbered and outgunned, tried to retreat, but Kane had positioned his fleet perfectly. There was nowhere to run. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Kythera fleet was space debris, and New Geneva was free. Kane stood in the observation deck, looking down at the planet that had cost so many lives. The surface was scarred, the great domes shattered, but the planet itself survived. It could be rebuilt. The people who had died there would never be forgotten. Admiral Torres approached, carrying a datapad. Casualty reports from the fleet. Kane took the pad, his heart heavy. Victory always came at a price. "How many?" 12 ships lost, sir. 3,847 crew members killed in action. The Kythera lost their entire fleet, 12,000 vessels, approximately 3 million personnel. Kane nodded slowly. 3,000 human lives for 500,000. The mathematics of revenge. "Sir," Torres continued, "we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The Kythera Empire is in full retreat. They're abandoning their forward positions and pulling back to their core worlds." Kane looked up. "They're afraid?" "Yes, sir. For the first time in their history, they've met a species that hit back harder than they did. Word is spreading through the galaxy that humanity is not to be underestimated." Kane smiled grimly. "Good. Let them be afraid. Let every species in the galaxy know that when you attack human worlds, when you kill human children, when you think you can erase humanity from existence, there are consequences. The fleet began its journey home, 8,000 ships carrying the survivors of the greatest naval battle in human history. They had proven something important, that humanity, when pushed to its breaking point, would not break. It would bend the galaxy to its will. In the years that followed, the Battle of New Geneva became legend. Children across human space learned about Admiral Kane and the fleet that blotted out the stars. They learned about Captain Morrison and the Thermopylae's final charge. They learned about Dr. Elena Vasquez and her daughter Maya, whose deaths had awakened something terrible and beautiful in the human spirit. The Kitharai Empire, once the terror of the galaxy, became a footnote in history. They never again attacked a human world. They had learned what every species in the galaxy would eventually understand. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The new colony ships that eventually returned to New Geneva found something unexpected in the ruins of the old settlement, in the remains of the agricultural dome where Dr. Vasquez had made her final stand. A single flower had survived a rose, genetically modified to bloom in the artificial atmosphere. It was red as blood, beautiful as hope, and as stubborn as the species that had planted it. The colonists built their new settlement around that flower, and it became the symbol of New Geneva reborn, a reminder that humanity, like life itself, finds a way to endure. And in the deep space monitoring stations that watched the borders of human territory, the message was clear on every frequency, broadcast in every language known to the galaxy. This is human space. We are not to be underestimated. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we will always come for our own. The stars themselves seem to listen and remember.